Okay, here's our next video. Let me erase the answers before we write them in. Okay. All right. So you're not going to have to work it out by hand every time like we did in the last video. There are shortcuts. And that's kind of what we're getting into here. So it says which trig functions are positive in the different quadrants. Okay, let's do this. So quadrant 1, our triangle would come out like this. Okay? And we worked out the 30, 60, 90 and the 45, 45, 90 out there. Now for this, it doesn't matter what kind of triangle they are. We know that this is x, and this is y, and that is 1. So sine is y over 1. Cosine is x over 1. Tangent is y over x. All of those things are positive. So which trig functions are positive in quadrant 1? All. Okay? Quadrant 2. We have it coming out like this. We get our reference angle here. This time we have negative x, y, and 1. Understand the negative x. When we're moving left, it's negative. When we're moving up, it's positive. So what would sine be? Sine would be y over 1. Both of those are positive. What would cosine be? You might try this if you get it. Cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse. That's not positive. Tangent would be opposite over adjacent. Not positive. Just sine. If you get it, try for quadrant 3 and 4. Negative x. 1. 1's always positive. Okay? Should note that. And, oh, sorry, this is negative x. This is negative y. Okay. So sine, here's my reference angle, would be opposite over hypotenuse, which is negative y over 1. That's not positive. Cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse, negative x over 1. That doesn't work. Tangent would be negative y over negative x. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Tangent is the only one in quadrant 3. Moving on to quadrant 4. Here we go. Here's our 90. Here's our reference angle. We got a positive x, we got a negative y, and we got a positive 1. Sine would be negative y over 1. That's no good. Cosine would be x over 1. That is positive. Tangent would be opposite over adjacent, which would be negative y over positive x, which is negative, which is no good. So here, they tell you the way to remember it. Remember the phrase. All students take calculus. Quadrant 1, all of them are good. Quadrant 2, sine is good. Quadrant 3, tangent is good. Quadrant 4, cosine is good. Good is in positive. So that's the way that you remember which are positive where. Why does that come in handy? It comes in handy here. I would recommend having this piece of paper with you at all times when you do assignments. Okay? You will have to memorize it. I don't know if they make you do that this year or next year, definitely next year. I've even heard of classes having a time test where you have to fill this thing out in like, I don't know, how many minutes, 3 minutes, 8 minutes, I don't know what the time limit is, but like they want you to know it. So here we go. Okay, let's start with, hey, if you want to try this on your own, give it a shot, but all we're doing is let me use a brighter color here. 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. All right. So now we got to go through and we got to fill out what each one is. Also, these little gaps in between are what these are in radians. Pi over 2. This is 0 or 2 pi. This is 3 pi over 2. And don't forget how to do that. Okay, these ones are that we figured out in the last video. But remember, if we want to do something like, if we want to get 60, all we have to do is go 60 times pi over 180. And we get 60 pi over 180. And 60 over 180 reduces to 1/3. So this is pi over 3. So all you have to do is multiply each degree by pi over 180, or you can start using common sense a little bit too, okay? Because some of them are going to mirror, right? So if we go back here, if you look at that other chart we did this one as pi over 4, and we did this one as pi over 6, okay? So if I want to go for 210, I can certainly go 210 times pi, or times pi over 180. Or I could be like, okay, I know 180 is pi, okay? And oh, this is the same as this, right? So I must have to take, that's pi, and then I must have to add this little angle, which is the same here. So I could go like pi plus pi over 6. And this is the same thing as going, and this is what a lot of your homework questions are like, same thing as going 180. This is the same thing as 180 plus 30 is 210. So if I were to add these two together, I would make pi as something over 6. And what's 6 pi plus pi? This whole thing is 7 pi over 6. You could go through here and you could try to figure out the rest of them if you want to. Or I'm just going to go ahead and fill these parts in because I think that I'm hoping that you get this. Okay, so this is 5 pi over 4. Then we got 4 pi over 3. We got 3 pi over 2. This one is 300 is 5 pi over 3. And this one is 7 pi over 4. And this one is 11 pi over 6. And then this is 2 pi over 3. And this is 3 pi over 4. And 150 is 5 pi over 6. Okay, we converted all of the different radians. All right, now we got to get to the rest of the stuff on here, which is the coordinates. So let's take this one right here. Okay, so if I was to get this, remember this goes x, y, right? Where this is y, and that is x. If this is 30, out here, this is 30, this is 60. Okay, so we got to get that x, y. So it's a 30, 60, 90, remember? So we know that this is out here, and a 30, 60, 90 is 1/2. And we know this x value is 3 times the square root of 2. Or square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and how did we get that? Well, think back to what we did back here. Okay? Right here, we're working on 30 degrees, right? I'm not going to repeat it and do it again. But we figured out that that point was what? The square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. All right? So that whole first quadrant is everything we did in the last video. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. If you need to rewatch the video to see how we got this stuff out here, go ahead and do it. Okay, but that first thing we need is square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2. So this is the square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2. All right, and then I'm going to fill in the rest. Again, all of these are in that chart above. So 45 was the square root of 2 over 2, comma the square root of 2 over 2. This is 1/2, the square root of 3 over 2. And now we've knocked out the whole first quadrant is done. Okay? Now, you can probably think about how we're going to get the other ones. Well, to get the other ones, see how these two, there was a Ferris wheel project we were going to do, and you're going to see how these two are at the same spot, right? Except this one is to the left, negative 1/2, square root of 3 over 2. And then this one mirrors here, and it's negative square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 over 2. And then this one is going to be, this is positive, the negative square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. And then you keep moving through, okay? Now, once we get to the bottom quadrants, don't let that intimidate you either. So this down here, I'm going to go do quadrant 4 first because everything's negative in 3. Let's go ahead and do that one last. So this one's going to come down here. So we start thinking about how far down is this negative x. Well, the positive x, same distance as this, right? Well, it's still square root of 3 over 2 over, right? But instead of going up 1/2, we go down 1/2. So again, this was the up 1/2. This sends you down 1/2. So I'll choose a color I haven't used yet, like this. So these two here connect. So the numbers of these are going to be the same, but which ones are negative and positive? I'm going right and down. So I'm going right, the square root of 2 over 2, and down the negative square root of 2 over 2. Pause it here and see if you can get the rest of them. Okay, we've talked through this quite a bit now. I think that you guys should be able to get it. Then we have 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2. Then we have negative 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2. Then we have negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. Then we have negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. Voila! There is the unit circle. So you're going to want to use this to answer a lot of the questions that are on your homework. And I may even do, if I have enough time, a small video of some of the problems on your homework. But I hope that everyone filled this out and that it was helpful because it is tricky.